Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Laura Kunkel, American Bloom's Executive Director. Did you know that AIB is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year? How exciting! American Bloom promotes and builds vibrant and sustainable communities through volunteerism and education by emphasizing flowers, plants, trees, heritage preservation, and environmental and lifestyle enhancements. We really envision communities across the country as the best examples of welcoming and vibrant places to live, work, and play. Through our programs, our grant opportunities, online resources, and the sharing of best ideas from towns and cities across the country, we empower communities to beautify and improve the overall quality of life. Today's webinar is an example of the ways that American Bloom shares information to help communities become more beautiful, vibrant, and sustainable. You can learn more about AIB by visiting our website at americainbloom.org. Okay, a quick housekeeping note. If you have questions during the webinar, please put them in the Q&A section of your Zoom toolbar, which is likely at the bottom of your screen. We will answer questions at the end. Please do not put questions in the chat function. Just put them in the Q&A section. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on the AIB website later today and also posted on AIB's Facebook page. I do hope you're following us on social media. Today's webinar is entitled Parks Pay Off, the Many Ways Green Spaces Give Back. This webinar is presented by Kristen Marks. She's the Executive Director of the Centerville-Washington Park District in Ohio. Kristen brings more than 2 decades of experience to the parks and recreation profession. She is passionate about creating lasting memories through exceptional park experiences and is dedicated to fostering a strong connection between the park district and the community it serves. We are so grateful to Kristen for being with us today. Take it away.
All right. Thank you for that introduction, Laura. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here and talk on this topic. Again, appreciate that introduction. I have been with the Park District, Centerville-Washington Park District for 24 years and in the capacity of director for the past 5 years. So I work with a wonderful team of folks who are committed to our mission of delivering fun, healthy, outstanding park experiences that connect the community to the outdoors. So you'll see our mission on that slide there. And our park district was established in 1959, and as development moved southward, a group southward meaning south from Dayton, we're a suburb south of Dayton, Ohio. So as development did move southward, a group of passionate residents had the foresight to find a way to preserve green space from development. So today, the Park District owns and operates 51 parks and offers nearly 700 programs a year. And I realize 51 is a very large number. Through the development process, the city and the township, they have a process called parkland dedication or open space transfer. So when a new development goes in, that's how we get additional parkland should it meet our criteria. So we have 34 neighborhood parks, and then we have nature parks as well as community parks. And all of those parks mean that about 85% of our residents can walk to a park, which is pretty amazing. We are a separate entity than the city and township. If you're familiar with a park district structure, it's a little bit different depending on where you live in the country, but we are a separate entity and almost a little bit like a countywide park system, but separate. So giving you all of that background information, I'd like to dive into our topic today. And this slideshow is inspired by former late night host. If you remember David Letterman, he always did his top 10 list, and I've always enjoyed that and found it very funny. So this was a fun presentation to put together in that style, and I've tried to introduce a tiny bit of humor, maybe not as funny as David Letterman, but a tiny bit of humor behind each of the 10 economic benefits of parks and green spaces that I've chosen to go over. So with that, we are ready to jump into the number 10 reason that parks are creating this economic benefit. So here we go. Number 10, parks are stormwater systems, cooling grids, and giant air filters all rolled into one. Translation, parks are the best infrastructure bargain on the books. So let's talk about that for a moment here. at the Park District. You might have seen on the former slide there that we have about 1,066 acres of scattered green space, and that provides millions of dollars in avoided costs for infrastructure, energy, health, climate mitigation, and we can use calculators from various sources that you see there. And we have estimated that the Centerville-Washington Park District provides just under $87,000 in stormwater management, and then cooling and energy savings. So think of our tree canopy. We're over $1 million for that. Again, this is based on our 1,066 acres of scattered green space. So this isn't just one contiguous forest, but the U.S. Forest Service has a really neat program called iTree. If you've ever looked at that, it has some neat tools that you can use to calculate your impact with the forested areas that you might have in your community. Our air pollution removal is around 375,000. Trees obviously remove particulate matter and other pollutants, which is quantified in dollars of reduced healthcare costs or costs related to poor air quality. And then carbon sequestration, we're around 2.5 million with the amount of acreage that we have throughout the community. So we're at a grand total of over $4 million a year in environmental or green infrastructure that we are creating with our green space. So it's kind of a neat number and a good way to tell that story, that economic story or that number story. We have a lot of qualitative anecdotes about how great parks are and how people love shade trees and that sort of thing. But to be able to put some numbers to it is always a good thing. And these are estimates. We have not done an official study where we're having someone go out into our parks and quantify how our trees are doing this. These are just from the various tools that you can find online to calculate it. So the next one, I think we're ready for number 9. Every grant and sponsorship we snag is money coming into our community. We're over here getting excited about 40-page funding applications. So over the past 3 years, we have brought in about $1.4 million in grant funding for capital improvement projects and land acquisition. Grants and donations are mostly funding our capital improvement projects, such as playgrounds, inclusive amenities, conservation efforts, things like that. So we've had good success with that. Kind of depends on the year, as you probably know, how competitive those grants are and what other projects are happening around you. But always good to go for those to stretch that dollar. Event sponsorship there in the middle, that covers various aspects of our special events, such as the attractions that we have there, T-shirts, and other items like that, where the physical pieces are covered with sponsorship. But we also have a corporate sponsorship from Dayton Children's Hospital at one of our park amenities. We have a spray ground or a splash pad at our activity center park. That's one of our largest community parks. And so when it came up for renovation, we approached Dayton Children's to ask if they would be interested in being part of that renovation. It's become a really important amenity to our community as far as a free place to cool off. And it's on the bus route, very accessible. Even, the accessibility extends to the restroom, where we've added a universal changing table, and the walking paths are paved, all that good stuff. So anyway, they signed on for that, which has been wonderful. And just our missions were aligned to serve that audience. And then we'll be reapproaching them when we redo the playground at the same park to expand that partnership. So those types of sponsorships are really important to help us, like I said, stretch that taxpayer dollar. And then we recently created a foundation to help us also target non-tax revenue for park enhancements. So the other benefit is that it's a 501c3, which opens additional grant opportunities that as a government entity, we may not be able to apply for. So that's been a great thing as well. It's just getting started. I know that $30,000 may not sound like a lot, but for a new foundation, we have been able to put that to work. And I'll show you on this next slide here on the left side. Something that the foundation wanted to do was to enhance one of our fire circles at our large nature park called Billiak Park. And our fire circle before had, decomposing logs that you could sit on, and it was grass and not paved. So if you were wheeling up to it, it wasn't very easy. I already mentioned the decomposing seating. We wanted to get something that was ADA accessible, but even beyond that, having attractive seating and that sort of thing. So we added benches, and the foundation was able to fundraise for this. And so that was a great donation to receive from the foundation to make this possible. So we're learning as we go, and the foundation committee is starting to gain traction and learn as they go too. And then on the right there, that was a state capital funded project here in Ohio. So we were able to install 2 new glorious bridges at our largest nature park, Grant Park, which has allowed us to keep access to those trails and allow first responders into the park. The main trail system is over a creek, so the bridges were pretty crucial to that. So first responders, maintenance, and just accessibility in general. So getting to know our legislators has been a big part of obtaining funding, and with it being National Parks and Recreation Month, always a good time to reconnect with your legislators and let them know what you're up to, invite them to your events and all that good stuff. All right, so that's a little bit about the funding piece. The number 8, I believe, is next. Trails and paths cost less than treadmills and never double as clothing racks. Plus, unlike your gym membership, you can't ghost them by Valentine's Day. So active people equals fewer healthcare costs, and I'll break that down here on this slide. So parks deliver health benefits that translate into real cost reductions for individuals and employers. If you think about having a healthy staff, what that means for health insurance and that sort of thing. So we do have about 39 miles of trails for walking, hiking, biking, running, skating, and those are free to every resident. As we know, regular activity reduces risk of heart disease, diabetes, depression. We can't forget the mental health benefits of trails and dementia. And I already mentioned, I know not all parks are free, but our parks are free, accessible. We have fitness infrastructure, no membership, no barriers. And another fact is that healthier employees mean lower absenteeism and employer-sponsored insurance costs. So, as I mentioned, having access to parks reduces those chronic health issues and also mental health burdens. And we're looking at a savings per person per year and reduced healthcare costs of about $1,861. And that's according to the City Parks Alliance. We have something, we do a lot of surveying. Every few years, we're doing a community needs assessment or a community input survey. And something that comes back high on our programs list, or, when we're asking about what programs people would like to see, is adult fitness and wellness. So we have weekly hikes and fitness opportunities 6 to 7 days a week in the parks. For those who like to work out or be with a group. So, I mentioned the parks are free to access, but we've also made it so you don't have to go out there on your own. If it's for sense of safety or sense of community, you can hike with a group, you can trail run with a group, you can use trekking poles with a group, you can do yoga with a group, you can do Tai Chi. So this has been really important to our community. And I will say, something unique to Centerville and Washington Township, where we're located, is that we have one of the oldest populations per capita in the state. And part of that's because we have 2 large senior living communities, but part of it too is just because people are able to age in place or have chosen to age in place. So we're making sure we're accommodating those things. And the survey data tends to show that as well. The fitness and wellness, the demographic that we're seeing are active agers or, newly retired, all the way up to people in their 80s as well. So having those opportunities is key for a healthy community and does make an economic impact on individuals. All right, moving on to number 7. Our events help drive real economic impact. You know it's working when sports tournaments create a GDP spike at Cold Scratch Pizza and a traffic jam at City Barbecue and Grater's Ice Cream. Not sure if you're familiar with those businesses where you're from, but think of your favorite local pizza place or your favorite barbecue or ice cream place, and that's what we have here. So talking more about local sports tournaments, you may host these in your community, and I have a pretty conservative breakdown of what you can bring in with just a small tournament. So think of those really large tournaments, either you have where you're coming from or that you've been part of with your own kids, how big they can get. So this is a 25-team, 3-day tournament, and we'll talk about the impact that has on the local economy. So we're assuming 25 teams, 15 people per team, which brings us up to 375 players. And then you average about 2.5 spectators per family. So if you were to take 375 and multiply that by 2.5, we're up to 938 spectators. And then add that together, you're up to 1,300 total visitors with the players there. 3 days for the tournament, and we are saying that spending per person per day, it seems unbelievable, but I'll break it down, $175. So you figure food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner when you're at a travel tournament. Retail, you forgot your shin guards. It's raining, you need an umbrella. Gas, you break that down between each individual, you're around maybe more than 20 right now. And then fees for the tournament and your lodging. So that's where that breakdown is coming from. There's probably other costs that we're not thinking of. When you forgot the ibuprofen, you gotta go to the drugstore or whatever it might be. So you multiply that out in our right column there, and you can see how it starts to really add up. And I'll explain in the green box where it says with the 1.5 multiplier, that is, let me find that. So the multiplier of 1.5 is commonly used for local tourism and recreation impact. So when we're looking at 2 tournaments in a summertime, 25-team tournaments, we're at 1.3 million. And then you add that economic or that recreation tourism multiplier, we're up above 2 million. So we're looking at almost just over $2 million in total impact, 13 to 14 jobs supported, and then $69,000 estimated local tax revenue. So if you're averaging a 5% sales tax, it differs, depending on where you live, but that's where that assumption is coming from. So it's nice to be able to tell those stories to your community when these tournaments are happening. It's not just the park that's being used and that sort of thing. It spreads out into your entire community or region, depending on the size. So that's that one. We'll move on to the number 6 reason summer park jobs give teens paychecks, skills, and confidence. And hey, every community needs the next generation that knows how to set up a welcome table and a tent in under 3 minutes. So I'm sure you're familiar with some of these wonderful summer staffers. And just to break that down as why this matters. So they're often a young person's first real paycheck and first professional experience. We hire about 80 seasonal staff for the summer programs and park maintenance. And I would say that we provide learning and customer service. Every one of those park interactions is, public facing, and they learn how to greet, assist, and solve problems. So these are things that I would say every employer values. We look at learning reliability and work ethic, showing up on time, following protocols, learning safety procedures, being adaptable to all those different working conditions when you're working in a park setting. And in our case, we have the environmental stewardship piece, whether we're doing habitat restoration or trail maintenance or conservation. We're building stewards that will appreciate this and seek this out in their communities, whether they stay here or go elsewhere. And then obviously that teamwork and leadership. We definitely think of this as a way for young people to start their career skills portfolio, and we should think of them as future community leaders. We have had several staff end up coming back to the Park District after college for part-time or even full-time employment, which they're bringing their spending right back to our community. And I think that would be, a local economy is really hoping for that sort of thing. You don't want your people to all move away, right? So that's the number 6 reason. Moving on to, oops, I went too far there. Number 5, forget granite countertops. Living near a park is the true home upgrade. Zillow doesn't mention it, but park views from the backyard beat subway tile any day. So speaking more to this, parks don't just feel good. They show up in assessed values and sales prices, which we've all heard this, and anecdotally, we say it all the time. We say that living near a park increases your property values. Sometimes we don't do a great job of demonstrating that with data. So there's always, ways we can do that, or studies that you can read for your local community and how home prices near a park, have gone up or remain high because of that benefit right nearby. So higher property values grow the local tax base. Obviously, that benefits schools, roads, and other public services. We believe that parks foster community engagement and do have data to back that up, and also support local businesses. We are really big on partnering for to increase our bandwidth and reach in the community and make an impact. And I'll talk about that more in a couple slides here. And then families as well as employers actively seek communities with park access when choosing where to locate. It shows to an employer that you're investing in quality of life, which could mean quality of employees. So we say that 51 CWPD parks across the district mean every household benefits from that proximity effect. And you may wonder how we came up with that 80 to 85% of homes in Centerville and Washington Township are within walking distance to a park. And that was one of our strategic plan initiatives to dial into that just a few years back. So on this next slide, we had an initiative called 10-minute walk to a park, which would equate to that half mile or so to speak to a park. And what we did is we took a map of the entire township and we started, drawing circles around our parks with that half mile radius to show where we may have gaps and where we're well covered. And what this was helping us with was land acquisition decisions. Do we see gaps where maybe we need to look at providing parks in that area, or is that land going to be developed with a neighborhood? Is this an opportunity for a park? Are there schools nearby that have green space? And this can, be the equivalent of parkland. So should we be looking at that too, which we did? And then are there city parks nearby? We are separate from the city and the township, and each of those entities have not 51 parks, but they each have a couple parks. So, those count too, and those are part of the circles on this map. So you can see the green means that the park is easily walkable, yellow's walkable with some restrictions or barriers, and then red is not walkable. So obviously the red is where we want to focus and figure out if we can make connections, work with our local entities to get sidewalk installed. When things come up for repair and replacement, is that the time to add a path, that sort of thing. In the bottom southeast quadrant of our map, you see a full red circle around green space there. That's one of our largest community parks, lots of soccer, walking paths, fishing pond, all those good things happening out there. It's a great park, but you have to drive to it to walk the park. So, it gets a red circle around it, even though it's great green space, but the road is such that you're not going to be walking on that road and feeling safe. So, that's something to look at in the future. And as the county makes road improvements, maybe there's something we can do there. So this is a great story to tell, though, to your residents, to show them that there really is a lot of opportunity here to stay active, different activities with your family, depending on the park that you are near or would like to go to. So that's been really beneficial. All right. going to go on to, I think we're on number 4 now. We're cruising. Um, Parks attract families and businesses because people want trees, trails, and playgrounds, not just stronger Wi-Fi. Parks are the original social network, and no one's at Linda is oversharing on them. So for this one, we have talent attraction and community competitiveness. So well-designed parks definitely foster community engagement, volunteerism, and support for our local businesses. With this one, we believe that these are definitely ways to create social gathering places and foster that community engagement and interaction, which can lead to that increased volunteerism or lead to new community initiatives and support for local businesses. Remote or hybrid workers are a little more common than maybe they were pre-pandemic. And so we have this reversal where people are choosing where to live first. And then they can work remotely or hybrid. So green space and trails are that top relocation factor for high earners or young families. They are looking at that, and we hear that anecdotally. At different tabling events, we will hear that people moved here for the parks or when they come to our programs, or we hear when they move away that we don't have parks like we used to have. So I do think it's definitely noticeable, and people will move somewhere for those gathering places, like I've mentioned. And then those workforce decisions, the companies are evaluating that location. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but can they attract talent here? A strong park system can signal that communities invest in quality of life, which means that you're going to have a better talent pool from which to choose, perhaps. And then that social capital and civic trust. Parks are where neighbors meet and relationships form. Earlier, I had mentioned our Hike for Your Health program, and they're out there hiking every Wednesday in our parks. And the neat thing about that group is that they're not just meeting on Wednesdays to walk the park for an hour. They're often going out to lunch afterwards or meeting for coffee before. They schedule their annual Christmas party at one of our facilities every year. So that type of thing is so gratifying that we could have had any part in forming these social relationships that as we know, are really important and not blossoming the way they used to with our use of social media and a little bit more of a disconnection with one another because it's easier to get lost in our devices. So these types of social interactions are extremely important and can be created just by programming a park, whether it's a special event or whatever it might be. And speaking of special events, I had mentioned our surveys. Another item that came back high on the programming side, it was adult fitness and wellness. And then another one that came back quite high was community events. So we have focused on adding additional community events, but not only that, partnering to add additional community events. So what local businesses can we bring in to be part of these events and then create further connection in the community, or even local businesses for weekly programs or monthly programs. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that in the next slide, but it has helped with, like I said, building more connections and getting people out into the park that maybe wouldn't have done so otherwise, or learning about the park district that maybe would not have done so otherwise. So that's been great as well. Okay. Number 3, volunteers run programs, restore habitats, and spruce up trails. It's the only place where digging a hole actually fills one. Try explaining that to your accountant. So with this one, real economic value is generated by your volunteers. And so I have some 2025 numbers since we're still in the middle of 2026. I don't have those numbers yet, but at our park district, we had about 3,670 hours contributed by volunteers last year. And if you go to the Do Good Institute, they place an hourly value on volunteering. And so if we multiply that out, we're at $132,634 that we have valued from our volunteer hours. So because of volunteer involvement, we have been able to do more with volunteer workforce rather than, not, we can't afford to add that much staff. So that's key. And, they're helping with things like habitat restoration and invasive species removal. They're program assistants, they're program leaders. They're helping in the schools with our nature programming or at our camps. They're doing weekly trail maintenance and park cleanup. So, it's been really crucial to checking all those boxes on our to-do list or meeting those demands of the community as they ask for this or that. And another piece of this is that people who give to parks advocate for parks. So these are your park ambassadors. They donate, they vote, they champion the district in their networks, and spread the word. Word of mouth is really important. One other thing I do want to say about this, though, is that if you're going to create a volunteer program, you have to invest in volunteer management. So it's not as easy as just recruiting a few volunteers. If you want to keep that going, you have to have that regular engagement. So whether that's dedicated staff who can balance recruitment and retention and recognition, that's really key. And if you can't have dedicated staff, maybe you have a dedicated volunteer who manages the volunteers. And then additionally, another way to grow volunteers is working with your community partners, whether it's the other government entities, local businesses, civic groups, they can boost volunteer engagement just because of their numbers, but also because you're able to diversify opportunities if you are partnering with a civic group or another municipality on their volunteer day. This is a way to introduce other people to your organization. So a good example of that is the city of Centerville has their beautification day for volunteers coming up later this month. And so they have involved the other entities. There's school cleanup sites. There's a site in the township where you can help. There's a site at the park district where you can help. And so you can, go to the city's website and sign up and get assigned these different locations. And so it's really a great way for all of us to get other people involved with our mission and our causes in a collective way. So that's worked really well. All right, number 2, from playground builders to yoga instructors to food vendors, your parks quietly power the local job market, proving that not all movers and shakers wear suits. So I'll explain this a little more. I alluded to it on another slide, but employment and economic output. So outdoor recreation is a pillar of the Ohio economy, and also for Centerville's employment base. In the state of Ohio, and it is an old number, I'm hoping we get a new study soon, but this is from the Economic Valuation of Natural Areas in Ohio. $8.1 billion contributed to Ohio's gross state product by outdoor recreation. So that's a pretty large number statewide, and that supports 133,000 jobs, direct and indirect, whether that's landscaping, recreation, education, retail, hospitality, construction, if you think of park improvement projects. So breaking that down a little bit locally, CWPD employs seasonal, part-time, and full-time staff, which we talked about. And then the district also sustains indirect jobs in the landscaping fields, construction, event services, food vending, athletic programming, and more. I mean, I could go on, and that's all circulating within Centerville. So for us, this partnerships have been really key to helping us expand our programming, a little more steering and less rowing, and being able to bring in experts where we're not experts to be able to add and diversify our programs. And all of that's based on survey data and what people want, who we're gonna partner with. And when you combine like our efforts, and then look at our county-wide system. We have 5 Rivers Metro Parks and their offerings and amenities. This local impact can grow to a regional impact. So we're not identical as park systems. We have different amenities. They have mountain biking and rapids for surfing and kayaking and horseback riding, things that we don't offer. So, this pulls in even more outdoor service providers for gear and lessons and partnerships. I'll give an example of a partnership that we've successfully run. We have a local running store that's pretty well known. It's called Up and Running, and they offer in our park, through a partnership with us, a trail running program. It happens every Wednesday evening. It's a pretty long running program. And our staff hires the administrative piece, the registering of participants, the weather calls, and things like that. But they're on site running that program. And it's a really beneficial program for all involved. You might get your next pair of running shoes at Up and Running because of your familiarity with their business now. And we're getting people out in the parks in a different way than we were before, and experiencing, recreation in a new way. So that's always our goal. And, I think last year we had over 75 different partnerships that were happening throughout the year with local businesses, civic groups, and our other government entities. So it's really important to us, and we wouldn't make the impact we do or have as many touches on our community if we didn't seek that out. And then it all ties back to that, why that's good for the economy as well. Those local businesses are benefiting. All right, I guess we're already to number 1 here. We see what that one says. The number 1 economic benefit of parks is parks keep people here, healthy, and happy. So dollar for dollar, they're an amazing value, and the squirrels are included at no extra charge. So the strongest economic case for parks is the one that's hardest to put a number on. People choose to stay. They're choosing your community because of the amenities you provide, the programs you're providing, the sense of community you're creating, all those things, and being able to engage with you in that way. So we definitely strive to create a strong sense of place where residents choose to stay and raise their families and invest in the community they love. And this is more of a summary slide than anything. You can kind of see that environmental infrastructure that we're providing, that healthcare piece that we're providing, that boost in home values that we're providing, the volunteer opportunities that we're providing, and the benefit to the local economy through sports tournaments or other type large events like that, and then the jobs that are supported because of that as well. And here's another summary slide that breaks down each one. And they are backed by real data from either the Park District or also, some of the calculators that are out there from U.S. Forest Service or Natural Resource Defense Council or US EPA. There are good ways to find some of these numbers if you were seeking that out. And obviously locally, you have resources as well. But from our infrastructure value, our grants and external funding piece, where we're, foregoing the use of taxpayer dollars with external funding to stretch that. Healthy people, that cost, events and local spending, youth jobs and that workforce, our property values, talent and business attraction, our volunteer economy, our local job market, and just quality of life. And really, quality of life, I would say, is the overarching hope through all of these economic benefits. So with that, that's my last slide. So I'm happy to take any questions or from the audience.
Very good. Thank you so much. This has been really, really good. One of the questions is something that you just touched on, but let's say these things again. The question is, what organizations or resources are you using to find those dollar values?
So it takes a little bit of digging unless you really want to pay for a study to be done in your community, which sometimes that's worth it. We've like I mentioned that every few years we're doing a survey. So in 2022, we did a survey with an outside consultant. So they were able to, that data really drove our next 5 years of capital improvements and amenities and programs that we wanted to provide. So we were using that community data. And then when we did it in 2025, we did it in-house. A lot of the same questions, but we're not getting it out to the community in the same way an outside consultant might. So that's one way to gather that type of data. And then if you're not wanting to put the dollars towards that, you do have to dig a little bit and come up with estimates using calculators on the internet. There are, whether it's government websites that it's amazing how many calculators I was able to find when I was formulating this presentation last year. I was happily surprised that, the iTree information, the stormwater calculations, things like that, that you can find to try to tell your story without having to do a full-blown study. So scour the internet. I haven't really tried much with AI. I don't know where people are with that, but who knows? Maybe that's a future option too, where if you can put in, quantitative data for your community, could it put some things out there that would be helpful as well? So hopefully that answers that question, but happy to get more specific if you'd like.
Great. A reminder to those on the webinar, you can go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A section. We're monitoring those and Kristen will answer questions. You did touch briefly just a moment ago about surveys. We have a question about that. Please explain the mechanism by which you conduct community impact surveys. Is that online, in person? And then secondary question on that is, how do you collect addresses related to people who have actually experienced one of your parks?
Oh, yeah, those are great questions. So I kind of touched on this when we hired an outside consultant. They're going to mail a certain amount of surveys, knowing that where they want to be for a statistically valid survey. So they'll send out, 3,500 surveys, and we'll get they kind of just know, or they'll keep doing it until they get that number back that they need. With that, we also did it as an online option, so they could click the QR code if they didn't want to do this, mail-in survey. So we did it old school with a QR code, so people could do it both ways. When we do it in-house, it's really helpful to do it with an outside consultant because you get a whole sampling of your entire township. They're making sure that where they've sent them to is distributed well. Where if we do it in-house, we're putting that, on social media, on our website. Maybe other entities will help. So you're a little bit preaching to the choir. If they follow you on social media, they must like you. So, but you can compare the data points from the consultant-driven survey and your in-house, and if they track, then that's helpful to see too, that things are pretty well aligned, or you got a good sample size. So yeah, that's how we're doing that. And then in our program department, something they're doing, well, we do so many surveys. So in our program department, they are doing quarterly program surveys. So every end of a season, we are sending out a survey to all the participants to hear and they tell us what program they did and give us input on whether they, had a good time or not. So that does actually drive change. It can drive start times for programs. It can drive how it's being instructed, all sorts of things. We're really trying to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, making sure that we're not just surveying people to survey them. We need to know how we can improve. We do that with our athletic leagues. We do not run the leagues. We have volunteer youth athletic leagues that use our parks, and we are surveying the youth athletes in the community to find out how things went. How were the field conditions? Did you get communicated about rainouts? Were staff friendly? All these things. We do it for shelter reservations too. Every couple months, we're sending a survey to those who reserve. So it sounds like a lot of data. I think we're just used to it, and making sure that we're doing that on a regular basis and making those decisions based on community input rather than instinct or feeling.
All right, a couple more questions. So this is the last chance. If you have questions that you're just dying to ask Kristen, please go ahead and get those submitted. All right, this is question is two-parter. Who does your fundraising? Followed up by, how do you locate local sources for sponsors? Come on, this is like the big question everybody wants to know, right? How do you find the money?
I know we're in this learning curve of fundraising, and it's a little bit we're trying. The foundation is now a fundraising arm, and so like I said, it's a new foundation, and they're learning where's the money, and it needs to build over time. When you're talking about a foundation, you have to kind of get those repeat customers or repeat donors. But we have worked with the Dayton Foundation to come up with different ideas about, getting the word out to financial advisors who are advising those who have that minimum distribution coming up, and letting them know that you exist, that your organization is here, or reminding them that, the park district can use these funds towards park enhancement. So that's one way that we've been trying to work through. And as far as sponsorships go, sometimes we're approached by others, but originally Dayton Children's had approached us to see if we had a project, and we were shot down a couple times before we were successful. We thought about a wellness trail at one of our parks, and a couple things we suggested just weren't hitting right. But when it came time to renovate the spray ground, that was perfect for all involved. And so sometimes it takes, don't be discouraged if you're shot down. Keep that door open, keep that communication open. And they were happy to continue providing t-shirts for our fun runs, or little things like that. We just hadn't hit the big one yet. So, keep the communication open, and keep them in mind. I think that would be a piece of advice, not just with, one sponsor, but when you're sending out those sponsorship packets, they think that this could be the time that they really are ready, or timing is just right and it hasn't been prior.
Thank you. All right, so we're down to one last question unless something comes in. The question is, has your park district had the need and the luck to have tax referenda successfully passed, and was this a challenge or a slam dunk?
We are fortunate to have really great community support for the Centerville-Washington Park District. We have successfully passed we run on 2 levies. So every 5 years we're on the ballot to renew or replace. But in 2023, we were able to do a replacement levy, which was our first increase since 2008. So it had been a while since we went out for an increase. We've been doing renewals, and it was, we passed at 57%, which I was happy with. But when you do a renewal, the last renewal we did, we were at 78% approval. And it was just amazing, the community support. And I think that's what drives us to keep doing the surveys and make sure that we are all on the same page with what the community is asking for, whether that's, I jokingly say that I'm the repair and replacement director, because we have so much that, over the years that we've put in the parks. Now it's time to make sure that we're repairing that or replacing it, because the community has come to expect that. And so it's just really a balancing act, but making sure you're always communicating that to the community, whether it's through those surveys or something we did leading up to our last 2 levies was called You Spoke, We Listened. And so this was putting out periodic articles or write-ups about, you said you wanted more shade in the parks, here's how we've delivered on that. That kept coming up in the surveys. Or you said you wanted more hiking trails, here's where we've added trails or enhanced trails. So really making sure you follow up on those, so they know that, oh wow, they really are listening. And they kind of see that on their own. Maybe you don't even have to say it, but some people might not hit up your hiking trails. They just like the idea of them. So you need to make sure that you're putting that out there.
Excellent. Okay, so we are out of questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Thank you so much, Kristen. That was just absolutely outstanding. We really appreciate your being with us today. As I've mentioned a couple of times, a recording of this webinar will be posted on the website later today, and also posted on our Facebook page. Our next webinar is on Tuesday, September 12th at 12 noon Eastern. We're going to switch gears. It's going to be called Caring for Sacred Spaces, Headstone Restoration and Cemetery Preservation. and it's going to be presented by Angie Burgess, a trustee with Preservation Dayton. You can learn more about this and other webinars we offer by visiting our website at americainbloom.org/webinars. All right, thanks everyone for joining us, and a very special thanks to Kristen Marks for the wonderful presentation. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.